Here's Canada, a country that ranks fourth in the world for oil production. In 2024, it pumped about 5 million barrels a day, behind only Saudi Arabia, Russia, and the United States. Sounds impressive, but there's one huge catch. To understand it, we need to move to Canada's east coast. This is a live online map of marine traffic, and these are the oil tankers sailing into Canada and out of the country. Notice something odd? Yep. Despite having plenty of its own oil, Canada imports hundreds of thousands of barrels of crude per day. And it's coming from the other side of the planet, from places like Saudi Arabia and Nigeria, shipped all the way to Canada. And it can cost around 3 times more than Canadian oil. But that's not even the most interesting part. Canada also sends about 80% of the oil it produces straight to the U.S. If you're confused about what's going on, trust me, so am I. So let's find out why Canada doesn't use the millions of barrels it produces itself and why it needs oil from Africa in the first place. Let's look at where Canada actually produces this huge amount of oil. Production isn't spread evenly across the country. More than 80% of Canada's black gold, or about 4.3 million barrels per day, comes from one specific place. Here it is, Alberta, a province in Western Canada. And this is where the problem begins, because the province itself simply can't consume that much oil. Only about 5 million people live in Alberta out of 40+ million across all of Canada, so local energy demand is obviously quite low. Normal household and industrial use can't possibly eat up the millions of barrels produced every single day. So where are Canada's main consumers of oil? Over here in the east, Ontario, Quebec, and New Brunswick provinces, home to major cities like Toronto and Montreal. These are heavily populated, highly industrialized regions where much of the country's population and manufacturing are concentrated. People use energy every day, and businesses run around the clock, burning enormous amounts of fuel. And here's the most interesting part. All of that is roughly 1,550 miles away from Alberta. A massive distance. But wait, oil's moved through pipelines, right? So how's Canada doing on that front? On paper, it looks fine. The key artery, Enbridge Main Line, does connect Alberta to central and eastern Canada, routing through the United States. But the issue is that this system isn't a brand new modern trunk line designed for today's production volumes. It's a network of pipes assembled and expanded over decades for a very different scale. As a result, the pipeline now runs close to its capacity limits and physically can't move the full 4.3 million barrels per day that Alberta produces. Which raises a logical question. Why not build a new pipeline? For starters, that would cost an unreal amount, and the route wouldn't be a simple flat stretch. It'd have to cross rivers, hills, valleys. By some estimates, a new eastbound line would cost at least $25 billion. Add public opposition, spill risks. In short, that's not really an option. So let's try another route. What about rail? You can move oil by train. Unfortunately, that option scares both economists and the public. First, shipping oil by rail costs about 3 times more than moving it by pipeline. That's expensive. Second, people remember what happened in 2013. The tragedy in the small town of Lac-Mégantic in Quebec. A freight train carrying oil is left without an engineer and starts rolling downhill. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. It enters town and derails right in the center. Cars flip, tankers rupture, the oil ignites almost immediately. Flames swallow nearby blocks. Explosions rock the area heard from miles away. That night, 47 people died. Downtown Lac-Mégantic was essentially wiped out, and Canada learned a harsh lesson. Oil trains are not only costly, they can become a disaster. So in the end, there's no truly smooth path for Alberta's oil to reach Eastern Canada, and that's why in 2023 and 2024, the country imported around 500,000 barrels per day from the US, Nigeria, and Saudi Arabia. But wait, is it really more profitable to ship oil from the other side of the planet? Well, this is where things get complicated. Buying and delivering oil from Saudi Arabia or Nigeria costs roughly $70 to $80 per barrel. Meanwhile, sending Canada's own oil by pipeline costs only $3 to $5 per barrel, and by rail, $10 to $15 per barrel. If the difference is that huge, why can't Canada, despite the problems and risks, ship Alberta oil by train anyway? Or spend big on a pipeline and move oil for pennies? Here's where the next problem comes. Canada can't really use its own black gold the way it would like to. Let me explain. In Alberta, oil is extracted from oil sands, which leads to a product often referred to as quite a complex substance. But how can oil be